Hello dear friends, welcome to my YouTube channel Mukesh English. In this video, I'm going to discuss a famous story by O.Henry after 20 years. O.Henry was born on September 11, 1862 and passed away on June 5, 1910. His original name was William Sidney Porter. He was an American short story writer whose tales romanticize the commonplace, in particular, the life of ordinary people in New York City. So basically, he was an American short story writer. His stories expressed the effect of coincidence on character through humor, grim, or ironic. And the most special thing about his stories is here his stories used to have the surprise endings. So now let's know about the story. The story, titled After 20 Years by O. Henry, revolves around the friendship of two childhood friends. So there are two childhood friends here, Jimmy Wells and Bob. And the story also talks about the loyalty, friendship, and trust. There's one more character, Constable Jimmy, which remains hidden throughout the story, which gets revealed at the end of the story here. Now, the two friends, Jimmy Wells and Bob, they grew together in the New York City, and they were the best buddies, the best friends. But both the two friends parted their ways when Bob went to West in order to earn money. On the other hand, Jimmy, he decided to stay back in New York. He did not go to West, he stayed in New York. So after 20 years, both the friends are going to meet. Let us see, how do they meet with each other? Are they able to identify each other? Let's go through the story. So this story, after 20 years, takes place on a street in New York City around the turn of the 20th century. Many of the businesses on the block are closed for the day. A police walks along the block, testing the doorknobs of businesses, making sure that they are locked and secure against the burglars. In the doorway of a hardware store that is closed, he comes across a man. The policeman, he meets a man who has an who has an unlit cigar in his mouth. Before the officer can begin to question him, the man assures him that he is not a burglar, that he is merely waiting for a friend. He goes on to light a cigar and tell the officer why he and his friend are meeting at such a dark and desolate place. The man explains to the policeman that 20 years earlier, he and his friend had dinner at a restaurant called Big Joe Brody's, which used to be located where the hardware store stands today. The officer confirms that this was the site of the restaurant up until 5 years earlier when it was torn down. At the same time, at the time of the last meal, at the time of the last food together, the man says to the policeman that at the time of their last meal, at the time of the last food together, he was 18 years old and his friend Jimmy was 20 years old. The two had grown up together and were the closest of friends, but the man was leaving the next morning to go out to the west to find his fortune, and Jimmy was the type of person who would never leave New York. So after having dinner, both of them they agreed that they were, no matter where they were or what they would be doing, but they would return to the same place at the same time, at the same spot, or at the exact time, that is 10 o'clock, exactly after 20 years. This is how the man has explained his story to the policeman. The officer expresses interest, asking why they had been in contact so seldom over the past 20 years. The man briefly explains that he has been busy in the West trying to make his fortune. He checks the time on his watch, which is adorned with the diamonds, indicating that he has been successfully in his business endeavors. The time is 3 minutes before 10 o'clock, the precise moment that they are scheduled to meet. The officer stays a few minutes more, and it is after 10 o'clock when he says goodbye and leaves. So the police officer has left, and the man who is waiting for more than 20 minutes. Finally, another man approaches, bundled up against a light rain that has started to fall. The new man calls the man in the doorway as Bob and answers to the Jimmy Wells. As a chart, Jimmy points out that he has not done as well financially as Bob. He has a position in city department. He suggests that they should go to a place where he knows of nearby, where they can get out of the rain and have a long talk about the old times. So when they pass through the light emanating from the window of a drugstore that is still open, Bob looks at the men he's with and exclaims with certainty that he's not Jimmy Wells. He's not Jimmy Wells. Though a man, he explains that though a man can change much in 20 years, the shape of his nose could never be so drastically altered. The other man says that he's in fact a plainclothes police officer, and the man whom he now refers to, a Silky Bob, has been under arrest since they met 10 minutes ago for warrants issued in Chicago. The man gives Bob a note and says that it is from Patrolman Wells. In the note, the real Jimmy Well mentions that he was in fact the officer who was with Bob at the site of Big Joe Brady's restaurant at 10 o'clock. But when Bob struck a match to light a cigar, Jimmy recognized Bob's face as the one who was wanted in Chicago. Jimmy did not have the nerve to arrest his old friend, so he had left before he could be recognized and found a plain clothes officer to arrest him. So, in this manner, we have seen that a true friend could not have the courage to arrest his own best or the true friend. Now, to conclude, we can say that the story after 20 years is a story of a meeting between two friends according to the promise they made 20 years ago. They wish to tell each others of what befell them in the intervening years. The end of the story brings a surprise. Dear friends, thank you so much for watching this video. You can reach me at mukeshenglish@gmail.com. Please do subscribe the channel, click on the like button for more videos on literature, workbook, pronunciation, grammar, communication skills, presentation skills, interview skills. Stay in tune with Mukesh English. Thank you once again.